Welcome back. We're now going to be discussing healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and more with Nithya Balasubramanian of Bernstein. The idea being, with all the uncertainty that we've actually been seeing in recent times, what does it mean for the pharmaceutical companies? Is it time now to go overweight on pharma? Nithya, thanks so much for joining us here. I was reading a recent report, but tell our viewers right now, what do you think should be the strategy now? Is this the time to go overweight on pharma? If you look at the pharma counters, they haven't done as well as, let's say, the hospital stocks.
True. I think most pharma stocks have moved sideways in the last couple of quarters. So there are actually 3 or 4 headwinds that investors are concerned about, right? So one is the higher US generic pricing erosion. So what was trending at about 4 to 5% deflation has become 8 to 9% deflation this year. The COVID therapeutic contribution has also meaningfully come down compared to the first quarter, where names like Cipla or Zydus or Glenmark, etc., benefited quite a bit from the second wave of cases that we had. That's largely diminished. And I think we're also increasingly hearing concerns about raw material price increases, logistic cost increases, which did not show up as much in Q2 because people had inventory, but now the worry is that it might show up in Q3. And of course, we've got FDA inspections have kicked off on the ground. So we are hearing news of FDA inspectors inspecting various plants, and we've started hearing there is news flow about different 483s now being awarded to the various plants. So I think these all have been broadly concerns with the pharma industry. But I think when we look at FY23, we think the US price erosion should actually come back to the same 4 to 5% kind of norm. We don't see the heightened erosion being sustained into FY23, and there are certain names that are less exposed to the price erosion trend. Sun Pharma, for example, they've shifted focus away from generics to specialty, which seems to be doing well. So again, relatively speaking, they have a portfolio which is immune, a large portfolio which is immune from price erosion. Similarly, if you look at a Cipla, we're looking at least some 3 very interesting products coming through in the US, which should again support growth for them. So I think from an FY23 perspective, US price erosion concerns should be lower. And from an India domestic perspective, I think it's back to basics, right? So we're hoping that Omicron willing, of course, we're hoping that things will hop back to normal, and then it's about who has what strength in which therapeutic category. The market leaders are likely to grow faster. So broadly, we think FY23 will be back to basics, and there are some names that we, of course, like. While we don't see this as a secular uplift for the entire industry, we do believe that certain names like Sun, Cipla, or Gland Pharma in our coverage universe, which we think should do well in FY23.
In fact, in your outperform list, when I was reading the report, it has Cipla, Sun, Lupin, Dr. Reddy's, and Gland. Let's go one by one. I want to begin with Lupin, and I'm only doing that because earlier this week, I think at least on 2 occasions, we did see it hit a 52-week low. So maybe our viewers would want to know what your stance is on this particular stock.
I think the challenge with Lupin has been cost control in the recent past. It's been a little disappointing when it comes to the margins. However, there are two things that we think should support top line as well as bottom line growth in the near term for them. One is the generic albuterol, which is again a complex inhaler product that they've put out in the US. We are seeing pretty strong growth in unit share for Lupin. And that, I think we should see it being reflected in Q3 and Q4 of this year. However, one of their other base products, which is famotidine, is seeing higher competition, price erosion as well, and the flu portfolio is not picking up. So I think it remains to be seen to what extent generic albuterol can help, but we do see improvement in margins from the Q2 numbers. When it comes to FY23, I think the one big product which can again change fortunes for Lupin is actually generic Spiriva, again another respiratory inhaler product, where they are the only filer so far. I think the commentary indicates that they have settled with the innovator. The IP challenge that was underway has been settled with the innovator, and they potentially have an FY23 launch date. They don't have an approval yet, but scoring an approval from the US FDA will be a very, very important catalyst for Lupin. This one product, the size of the brand in the market is about 600 to 700 million dollars, and given that they are the only filer so far, they're likely to enjoy exclusivity for a while. So a pretty meaningful product at very high gross margins. So we believe these are the two reasons why we think Q3, Q4 supported by generic albuterol and FY23 supported by generic Spiriva should look better than where they are right now. But I can imagine the sentiment in the street, which is that it's been a little disappointing on the margin front.
Well, little disappointing, I think, is an understatement. At least that's my personal view. I mean, there was a time when I used to report margins of Lupin which were north of 20. Now they are nearing in mid-teens. Okay, I'm going to shift gears and talk about Cipla. Cipla got re-rated because they had a COVID portfolio. That COVID portfolio got them great visibility and great perception benefit. Suddenly the COVID portfolio has to be written off. But now that we are seeing another wave of virus coming in, what happens to a company like Cipla, which has a very big COVID portfolio?
See, I don't think the stock should be valued based on whether they will be able to sell the COVID therapeutics or not. It's, of course, very hard to predict. We don't know what's going to happen with Omicron. If there is indeed another wave, then again, given the extent of the portfolio that they have, Cipla should benefit. And that's the reason you saw the yo-yo in the stock in the last couple of weeks as well. But I think the reason we like Cipla is not because of their COVID therapeutics. We actually like them because their base portfolio in India is pretty strong. They have one of the highest exposure to domestic markets compared to peers. 40% of their portfolio is India. And India for them is a high EBITDA business. And I think we are seeing a couple of changes in the base portfolio. One, of course, respiratory is a place where they have had market leadership, so we expect them to continue to grow post market beating growths. And this is a portfolio which is a big drag for them in FY21 when people there were lockdowns and people were wearing masks. Asthma triggers weren't happening, so patients weren't walking into the doctor's clinics, and that's not the case anymore. So, on that low base, as patient footfall normalizes in respiratory, we do believe that Cipla should see meaningful growth both in top line as well as bottom line, supported by the respiratory portfolio. And I think diabetes and cardiovascular is a space where Cipla, let's say, has grown slower than some of their peers. But now they've tried to fix the portfolio gaps by in-licensing several of these products from other MNCs. So now that the basket is full, we expect them to start investing in this space and again grow in this large and growing category as well. So we believe that the base portfolio, India-based portfolio, is something that should support growth. And I think when it comes to the US, of course, everybody know and understand that they have these interesting respiratory generics in the portfolio. We are looking forward to a generic Advair launch in the second half of FY23. I think the catalyst would be towards the end of the fourth quarter or the first quarter when they should be expecting to hear back from the FDA. That's an important one. I think this is something that the street appreciates, but what I think is a little less appreciated is the long tail when it comes to respiratory generic products. Unlike a lot of other therapeutic categories, there is very little research that's happening in either your first line or your second line treatment in asthma and COPD, which will come and replace these products. So albuterol is a 63 million unit market, and it's been so for the last several decades. Symbicort, similarly, is another product which I'm sure Cipla is working on. Though they haven't explicitly mentioned, this is one of the larger products. Again, a product where the volumes continue to grow and likely to remain stable even after generics enter. So we think that as the market starts appreciating the longer tail and respiratory products, Cipla should re-rate even further. And that's the reason we like Cipla. I think COVID is opportunistic. It entirely depends on whether there is a next wave or not and how big or small it's likely to be.
Wonderful thoughts on Cipla. Let me go back to the macro positioning, which is one category. When I say category, let me classify my question: diabetes, oncology, respiratory, antibiotics, anti-infective. Where are you bullish about for next 2 or 3 years in terms of Indian companies, their ability to scale up, and in terms of the market size?
Just from the fact that incidence is increasing. If you look at the state of disease burden report, which was published, I think, a couple of years back, there is a very clear trend towards higher incidence of non-communicable diseases. So your respiratory, COPD, for example, is increasing in prominence, diabetes, cardiovascular, oncology. So I think chronic diseases will see higher growth than the OPs are not just attractive from a growth perspective, they're also very attractive from a margin perspective. For a well-run, mature chronic division, your EBITDA can be in the range of 45%, right, for one of the market leaders. While for acute therapies, if you're a market leader, again, a well-run, mature acute division will have EBITDA in the range of 22 to 25%. So that's the delta in terms of margins in chronic therapy. So I can imagine pharma manufacturers investing more and more in chronic therapies as well, which would also support market expansion and growth. So I would say that it's more likely that chronic therapies have been growing faster than the market in the recent past. And I see that being sustained in the next few years as well.
What would you say is the dark horse or the high risk, high return bet for next couple of years? And let me just qualify it for the benefit of our viewers here. When I say high risk, high return, I'm essentially referring to, let's say, a company like Natco, very strong on R&D. You get something right, it's a re-rating moment. Biocon or Sun Pharma Research. What would classify in your assessment as not a steady compounder, but more like a event or approval-based high-risk, high-return idea?
So I won't be able to comment on names that I don't cover. So in my coverage universe, I can imagine Lupin falling into that bucket, largely because of what I said before. Their fortunes are tied to certain complex generic approvals coming through in the US. And for them, generic Spiriva is that catalyst that you're referring to. It's a 1 or 0 event, right? If they do get an approval, they already have a settlement. It's a fabulous product, like I said, $700 million market. Even if I assume 50% erosion and a 50% market share, you're talking about a single product bringing them $170 million or more. So that's a binary event for them, assuming they get an approval. Again, the time frame to watch out for will be towards the end of fourth quarter or early first quarter is when I can imagine them expecting to hear back from the FDA. But like I said, the challenge with Lupin has been cost control. And the FDA inspections, several of their plants still have a warning letter or an OAI status that also remains an overhang, which is why it's a riskier bet.
Right. Nitya, what I want to talk about is outside the pharma universe, what's happening with healthcare tech, for instance. And I ask this because of the rich IPO pipeline that this particular space has in light of the API Holdings IPO, which is up next.
So we think it's a very interesting sector. We've seen a spate of IPOs, right? So we've got MedPlus filing, we had Wellness Forever filing, and now API Holdings is filed as well. So we think it's a very interesting sector. Like most other e-commerce consumer tech sectors in India, we do see a long growth runway. If you look at the market today, the penetration is about 2%, very, very low, much lower than even other e-commerce categories. But we do see a lot of tailwinds, which is likely to improve this penetration to at least 8 to 10% levels. And at these levels, you're talking about a market size of $7.5 billion. And this is not adding the B2B tech space, right? So that could add another billion or so. So we're talking about a pretty large space. And I think there are some very interesting business models that are emerging. API Holdings in particular, we put out a report earlier today. So we think it's a very unique business model for a couple of reasons. So one is it's trying to build an integrated ecosystem, right? So they're not narrowly focused on providing only pharmaceuticals or providing only diagnostics. They actually have multiple consumer touch points along the patient journey. And they also have built a fairly strong backend. So they have a 1P inventory model. They've got a B2B marketplace connecting distributors and retailers. And they have a lot of technology solutions for this space as well. So we think the integrated ecosystem is what will help them build a bit more resilient business model. And you can also see that competition is heating up in this space. We've got Reliance after the acquisition of NetMeds. We've got Flipkart. They bought Sasta Sundar, Tata 1mg, of course. And there is still, again, I think Amazon is yet to announce exactly what their foray into healthcare would be, but we know they're interested. So I think the space is heating up. And of course, we have Apollo 24/7 as well. The space is, of course, heating up. It is going to see a lot of investments. While competition is higher, we think that because penetration is so low, we think there is room for everybody. And API Holdings for sure is an interesting name to watch out for. I think their IPO is likely around maybe towards the end of first quarter. That's when we would expect them to hit the markets.
Okay, and we'll chat again soon when the IPO is around the corner. Nithya, always great to speak with you. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Pleasure as always. Thank you.